Welcome to the Bandano Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. Project B has finally landed their first official star. Yes, this is not their first signing, but this is the first signing with real star power. You had Nneka Ogwumike. You had Alyssa Thomas. You had Jonquel Jones. You had Jewel Lloyd, Camila Cardoso, Janelle Saloon, Kelsey Mitchell, Lee Mang, and now you have Sophie.
Look, Sophie Cunningham's whole move wasn't about trying to save the world. Not at all. It was about the game of basketball and the giant, colossal paycheck that was attached to it. While all these other stars were busy putting out their perfectly crafted PR statements, Sophie's jump to Project B just ripped the mask right off the entire women's basketball scene. This was so much more than just another player signing a contract. It was a bold middle finger to the status quo, basically a loud and clear declaration that loyalty has a price, and you know what? Project B was finally willing to pay it. The silence from her former league, it was absolutely definite, and the fallout was immediate and brutal for all the people left behind in this new arms race. This was all about cold, hard cash and the freedom to just play the game she loves without any of the political pressure. And her real reasons for doing it were about to shatter everything we thought we knew.
Unrivaled runs in the middle of that. If you are in Project B, there is no way, shape, or form you are taking part in Unrivaled. That's just how the schedule lines up. Unrivaled continues to lose miserably in the arms war. Unrivaled continues to lose miserably in the arms war. Sophie Cunningham, she was one of the more popular WNBA players before Caitlin Clark joined the league. She was one of the more popular WNBA players before she joined the Indiana Fever last season.
The official story they were selling was all about growing the game, a line we've heard before that Cunningham's first announcement definitely echoed. But if you looked just beneath the surface of those carefully chosen words, there was a completely different thing happening. It was a story that said a whole lot about players finally having some real power and the tough economic situations that WNBA stars actually face. I mean, her public image has always been focused on just pure basketball. That's a huge contrast to so many of her peers, which is exactly what made her signing such a lightning rod for these much bigger discussions. This wasn't just her changing jobs, it was a powerful statement.
She sold out, followers rose to the roof, TikTok rose to the roof. This is the first domino from what I'm seeing that have people actually saying, wait, where can I watch this? Where could I watch this? Yeah, Kelsey Mitchell was cool. Yeah, she's cool. Camila Cardoso, yeah, that's cool. Well, this was the first domino that I'm seeing. People are like, wait, maybe I do want to check this out. Maybe I do want to see what this is all about. Let's take a look at some of the reactions before we get into the article. So
get this. Project B's schedule runs from November to April, and that sets up an unavoidable collision course with Unrivaled, which is another new league popping up. The rule is simple and direct. If you commit to playing in Project B, then any thought of also playing for Unrivaled is completely off the table. You can't do both. This direct scheduling conflict really shows you Project B's aggressive game plan. They're trying to corner the entire market on talent, and they're forcing players to pick a side in what's quickly becoming a huge battle for who will dominate. And Unrivaled, which was already finding it hard to land big-name players, now finds itself even more outplayed. It's proof that this arms race for basketball supremacy is far from over. Project B isn't just trying to compete, it's trying to conquer.
And this, that, and the third. She wasn't one of these fake WNBA activists, turned player, turned activists, turned player, turned No, she just wanted a ball. Sophie Cunningham just wants the ball. She wants to play basketball. Salute to Sophie Cunningham. I agree. Go get that money. Sophie never claimed she wants to save the world or painted herself to be better than all, so I'm not even mad about this. Get your money.
Now, before Caitlin Clark basically took over the world, Sophie Cunningham was already a huge fan favorite. Her popularity was building up, nice and steady, but it was last season, when she was in that Indiana Fever jersey that her star just completely exploded. Remember that whole JC Sheldon headlock thing? That moment of raw, unfiltered intensity? That's what launched her into a totally new level of fame. All of a sudden, her jersey sales went through the roof. Her social media followers blew up, and she was all over TikTok. This wasn't just a good player anymore. She had become a phenomenon. A face you could put on a poster that Project B knew could grab global attention in an instant. Signing her was a brilliant strategic move, designed to make the biggest splash possible.
Project B will challenge Unrivaled. The money is huge in Project B. To play 5v5, Unrivaled is 3v3 in a high school gym. 3v3 in a high school gym. Unrivaled is...
For a lot of people, Cunningham's signing was a really important turning point. It felt like the first real domino to fall that made the casual fans stop and actually pay attention. Sure, they signed other good players like Kelsey Mitchell and Camila Cardoso, and those were respectable gets, but Sophie, she brought a totally different level of buzz and excitement. People started asking questions like, wait a minute, where can I actually watch this new league? This change in what the public was interested in was a massive win for Project. It showed that they finally had a player who could break out of the niche basketball world and get a wider, more mainstream audience genuinely curious. It felt like a potential game changer.
Players are saying, I'd much rather play in Project B and make the millions than play in the WNBA, right? Not a lockout, I lost my train of thought. It only affects the WNBA if the contracts are exclusive. There we go, finally got it out. It only affects the WNBA if the Project B contracts are exclusive. If it's written and set in stone. If you play Project B, if the WNBA is back up and running, you can't play in the WNBA. It's the only way it affects the WNBA realistically, because the seasons don't interfere with each other. They don't cross over with each other. You could still play in the WNBA, go get Project B, and go back into the WNBA. You'll be playing damn near 11 months straight.
And the reactions from fans online, they were brutally honest. A lot of them were pointing out the exact part of Sophie's public image that made her so attractive to Project B and a certain part of the fan base. She was never one of those WNBA players who was always trying to be an activist for women's rights and then playing over in Saudi Arabia. You saw comments praising her for just being realistic about it all, and that feeling, even if it was controversial for some, really highlighted a huge difference. Sophie Cunningham just wanted to play basketball. She didn't want to be weighed down by all the outside political stuff, or what some people call virtue signaling. That's straightforward, what you see is what you get authenticity. That was her brand, and it really connected with a lot of people.
Next fall with men's and women's 5-on-5 basketball. The women's players it has signed so far are big names getting big salaries that could shake up women's basketball across the globe. The league planned November to April schedule conflicts with Unrivaled and European leagues, but not the WNBA. Project B is luring players with what Front Office Sports reported annual salaries over $2 million. The WNBA Supermax last year paid under $300,000, and the league has still not offered players a max salary over $1 million in its ongoing and contentious labor negotiations. Well, not technically, but there are incentives via rev sharing that if the players hit, they will be getting over $1 million.
The podcast host was right there with them, basically saying the same thing. He pointed out that Sophie wasn't the type to get on a soapbox and scream from the mountaintops about activism. He even specifically called out what he called fake WNBA activists, drawing a really clear line in the sand. The message was that Cunningham's appeal was all about her laser focus on just the game itself. And this story, whether you think it's fair or not, really cemented the idea that Project B was offering a different path. It was a place for players who wanted to put the sport first, ahead of any social or political positions. For Sophie, it meant she could chase her passion without carrying the extra burden of having to be a spokesperson for every single cause. And that was obviously a massive draw for her.
Ladies go through when they're negotiating a new CBA deal. Again, people, these reporters and journalists leave out. I have not seen anybody report the clear conflict of interest that's going on within negotiations with the CBA, between the players and the owners, between Ogumike and the owners, between Fee and Bree and the owners. I have yet to see anybody point out the blatant conflict of interest. But they'll fluff this shit up though, right? They'll fluff it up. The league announced Mitchell on November 24th. She broke out in 2025, leading the Fever on a long playoff run despite an injury to Caitlin Clark. She finished 5th in MVP voting. Lloyd, blah, blah, blah. Jones, blah.
And then, of course, there's the money. That's the huge elephant in the room that really explains everything about why Sophie and others decided to make this jump. The reports are that Project B is throwing around annual salaries of over $2 million. Now, compare that to the WNBA Supermax contract. Last year, that maxed out at under $300,000. And the league maximum still isn't even close to $1 million, even with these hard-to-get revenue-sharing bonuses. This isn't just a simple pay raise we're talking about. This is a chance to build generational wealth. For any professional athlete, that kind of financial difference is simply impossible to ignore. It makes the offer from Project B pretty much too good to pass up.
Go play in Project B, go play in Unrivaled, and we'll tweak some things with the CBA. Get a new gang of girls in here, courtesy of the college ranks, courtesy of the overseas, and we'll move forward with them. Interesting. But the question is, does this help them land Caitlin Clark Kent? Now, Yahoo put out an article in which they say that's the goal of it all. I'll pull it up real quick for you. And here we go. This was actually the first article I was going to use.
But it's not just about the huge salaries. Project B is making the deal even sweeter by offering these players actual equity in the new league. This is a move you see more and more in new sports leagues. It turns the athletes from just employees into actual stakeholders who have a vested interest. It connects their long-term financial future directly to how successful the league becomes. It's a really smart incentive that goes way beyond just one contract, offering them a real piece of the pie as the whole thing grows. This kind of forward-thinking approach is a powerful magnet, especially when you compare it to the old-school league structures that almost never give players these kinds of direct ownership opportunities. It gives them a real stake in the game. The host then made a really provocative point. He said that those activists over at the other league, Unrivaled, they don't actually want someone like Sophie Cunningham. Now, that's not just a throwaway comment. It points to a deep, fundamental difference in ideology between the two leagues. The suggestion is that Sophie, with her reputation for being all about the ball, doesn't really fit the mold that the rival organization is looking for. It hints that Unrivaled might be trying to build a very specific brand of player and public image. It's a harsh truth about the business side of things, implying that who gets picked isn't just about skill on the court, but also about whether they align with the league's bigger mission or values. The potential impact on the WNBA gets pretty complicated. It only becomes a real problem if Project B's contracts have exclusivity clauses that stop players from playing in both leagues. Right now, the seasons don't totally overlap, so, in theory, a player could play in both Project B and the WNBA, but man, that would be a brutal, grueling 11-month schedule of non-stop basketball. Still, the massive financial appeal of Project B could easily tempt players to put their energy into the new league, especially if the WNBA keeps dragging its feet in these tense labor talks, without seriously bumping up player pay. The choice for players starts to become crystal clear. You have to remember that the ongoing labor negotiations in the WNBA are a huge part of this whole story. While the current collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, does have revenue-sharing incentives that could theoretically push player salaries over $1 million, the truth is that those goals haven't been hit yet, and the owner's position is pretty straightforward. You need to put butts in the seats, get more people watching on TV, and hit these merchandise sales numbers. Until those things happen, those $1 million salaries are just a distant dream. This forces players to look for immediate, guaranteed financial security somewhere else, which is a stark contrast to what Project B is putting on the table. Now, to add another messy layer of controversy to the WNBA's internal drama, the podcast host brought up a major conflict of interest. He pointed out that Nneka Ogwumike, who is always in the MVP conversation and is also the president of the WNBA Players Association, has also signed on with Project B. And he asks the question, how can a key person in the player-owner negotiations for the WNBA also commit to a rival league, especially a league that's offering way more money and equity? This whole situation definitely complicates any future CBA talks. It raises some serious ethical questions about player representation and where loyalties really lie. It's a huge, under-the-radar source of tension. And this all affects the WNBA's roster management too, especially when it comes to free agents. The league could, in theory, react to all these players leaving for Project B by just saying, fine, don't worry about re-signing here. They could decide to just bring in a whole new group of players from college or from overseas and then just tweak the CBA to make it work for them. This would be a really bold strategy, a kind of power play where the WNBA might choose to just rebuild its entire talent pool instead of getting into a bidding war with Project B that it probably can't win. This would completely change the face of the league as we know it. It's a huge risk. But Project B isn't just trying to grab the stars that are already out there. It has its eyes on the single biggest name in all of basketball, Caitlin Clark. Yahoo Sports reported that having Cunningham on board could be the key that opens the door for Project B to add Clark to its roster down the line. Clark's incredible popularity here in the States would absolutely boost the whole project on an international level. It would help Project B achieve its goal of global dominance. Cunningham, who is a well-liked and very visible star, could act as a great ambassador, making the idea of joining Project B even more attractive to the game's brightest new talent. The marketing possibilities for Project B go way beyond just the basketball court. With its November to April schedule, it overlaps with the F1 season, which starts up in March. The host was speculating about all the potential cross-promotional events they could do. Can you just imagine the Project B players showing up at the Saudi Arabia F1 race? That's a marketing goldmine right there. This kind of global exposure, piggybacking on existing mega events, could introduce players like Sophie Cunningham to a whole new international audience. People would be asking, who's that at the F1 race? And the answer would be, that's Sophie Cunningham. That kind of synergy promises a level of brand reach for the players that we've never seen before. The difference between Project B and Unrivaled is just night and day. And it's about more than just how much they pay the players. Unrivaled is being described as a 3-on-3 league that plays in what looks like a high school gym. It's a really stark image that makes it seem less professional. Project B, on the other hand, is promising real 5-on-5 basketball and has much bigger ambitions. It's a more traditional and widely recognized format. This difference in scale and professional feel will definitely influence player choices, because athletes will naturally want to go to leagues that not only pay better, but also offer a more prestigious and globally recognized place to compete. It's a clear step up. Sophie Cunningham's choice wasn't just about her own personal gain. It was really a reflection of how much the entire world of women's basketball is changing. She represents a group of players who just want to focus on their sport, get paid fairly for it, and have global opportunities without all the extra political baggage. Her move totally validates Project B's whole model. Massive paychecks, player equity, and a focus on pure basketball entertainment. It's a calculated gamble for the league, for sure. And for Sophie, it's a very clear statement about her priorities. It shows that in today's game, player loyalty is something you have to buy. It's not just a given. Ultimately, Cunningham's jump over to Project B really shines a light on the huge divide that has opened up in professional women's basketball. On one side, you have the established leagues that are struggling with old problems and limited money. On the other side, you have this new, super well-funded league that is actively shaking things up by throwing unprecedented amounts of money and ownership stakes at players. This isn't just a battle for fans anymore, it's a battle for the actual talent that makes the sport go. Sophie's choice is a signal that the future of women's basketball might look very different from its past, and that now, the players are the ones calling the shots. Sophie Cunningham didn't just sign with Project B, she basically set off a firestorm. She exposed all the uncomfortable truths about how players get paid, about conflicting loyalties, and about the real cost of activism in pro sports. Her move was a calculated and unapologetic chase for financial security and pure basketball. And it sent a massive shockwave through the entire women's basketball world. This wasn't just part of the explanation, it was the whole explanation. It was a brutal wake-up call for a league that probably thought it held all the power. The game has changed forever, and Sophie just showed everybody exactly how.